Magandang umaga, magandang hapon po, Pinnacle Village. Tayo ho ay nagpapatuloy ng ating anniversary series po, How's Your G.R.A.S.P? Kung ating babalikan po ang mga nakaraang pong 3 linggo, si Pastor Gino ho nagsimula po sa letter G. And we're talking about G, which means groups, and we want everyone ho to be able to commit to a huddle group ho in our church at Pinnacle Village. Naniniwala ho tayo na ang isang tao po, kapag naging manampalataya ho, hindi lang po siya may pagpapahalaga po sa kanyang pagtitipon tuwing linggo, kundi naghahanap po siya ng isang mas malalim na connection po sa loob. We are a family. We are belongers. And one of the many advantages of being connected to a huddle is because you grow together. Mahirap pong lumago na hindi ka po kabahagi sa isang maliit na grupo. But yung pangalaw po, yung letter R, reaching out. At si Pastor Amber po ay nakapagturo pa tungkol dito na kung saan yung R po is reaching out. And that is the prayer po of our church, Pinnacle Village. That our lives will be witnesses to other people who are not yet in Christ. Our friends, office mates, our family members. That through our lives, nakikita ho nilang ating buhay po at doon nagpapatotoo ho ng pangailangan po ng sino man po sa kanila ng isa hong buhay kay Kristo na kayang magbago ho sino man ho tayo. That's our reaching out. But last week po si Pastor Amber, si Pastor Dave talked about the letter A, which means abilities. That our lives should be set apart for God's services. Tayo ho may kanyang kaloob. Meron pong gifting and skills and talents po ang bawat isa sa atin. But ang tanong ho sa atin dito ngayon, nagpagamit na ba ho tayo? Tayo ho manay tayong volunteers pag Sunday. Ang buong church po ay tumatakbo sa magitan po ng napakaraming volunteers. And many of you have decided not only to follow God, but to surrender your talent to God and allowing your life to be used by Him for ministry. But today, allow me to continue with the letter S, which means to support the church by giving generously. At yun po ay isang topic po na kinakailangan daanan sapagkat ito'y bahagi po ng ating seri. If you are here for the first time and somehow you feel uncomfortable talking about this topic, ito po ay bahagi po ng seri ho. At napakagandang importante lang ho na ating pag-usapan. Bakit? Sapagkat ang Biblia ho ay napakarami hong sigurong nababanggit patungkol ho dito. Jesus talked about money and giving and being generous so many times, a lot of times in the Bible. There are 25 Bible verses about generosity. 16 of the 38 parables were concerned with how to handle money and possessions. In the gospel, an amazing 1 out of 10 verses, 288 in all, deal directly with the subject of money. The Bible offers 500 verses on prayer, less than 500 verses on faith, but more than 2,000 verses on money and possession. Kaya ho ang tanong ho natin, bakit natin pinag-uusapan ho ito? And again, I've said earlier, Jesus talked about money, God talks about money a lot of times, and I believe it matters a lot because how we handle our finances will reveal what is important to us, what we believe, how we spend our money, kung saan ho napupunta yan. Tingnan mo ho yung iyong credit card expenses po. Tingnan mo ho yung iyong account, kung saan ho napupunta hong ating pananalapi. It will reveal our priorities and it will tell us what we really value. Jesus said in Matthew 6:21, anong sabi niya? Your heart will be where your treasure is. Ang lalim ho niyan. Alam mo kung nasaan ang puso mo, kung nasaan po ang paghawak natin at paggasto ng ating pananalapi. Sa Tagalog, sapagkat kung nasaan ang iyong kayamanan, naroon din ang kanyang iyong puso. Si Michael Phillips po isang financial writer. He said, money is a mirror. An examination of your money and the way you use money is a way of understanding yourself in the way that a mirror provides a way of seeing yourself. Charles Riley, a Bible scholar, said, how we use our money demonstrates the reality of our love for God. Yan no, ang magandang test ng ating pag-ibig sa Panginoong Diyos. Kasi ang Diyos ho mayroong kompetisyon. Alam niyo ba ho yun? May kompetisyon po ang Diyos sa ating puso. Kaya sabi ni Charles Riley, how we use our money demonstrates the reality of our love for God. In the same way, it proves our love more conclusively than depth of knowledge. Length of prayers or prominence of service. Napakalinaw ho ng sinasabi ni Charles Riley, bakit ang Diyos ho may kompetisyon sa ating atensyon at sa ating puso, sa ating pag-ibig. In Matthew 6:24, Jesus said, you cannot serve two masters at the same time. You will hate the one and love the other. You will be loyal to the one and not care about the other. You cannot serve both God or you cannot serve God and money or mammon po. Nung panahon yun kasi, there's another idol, small g God, which is called mammon. You cannot serve God and money at the same time. John Thornton po, who wrote the book Jesus' Terrible Financial Advice, anong sabi niya? As a fake God, money's only power is imitation. It falsely promises to give you what? To give you, akala mo, binibigyan ka kapayapaan or security or kaligayahan. It falsely promises to give you the world, even though the world isn't the idols to give. The gifts money gives are an illusion. Hindi totoo yan. Simply put, they are not real. Salamat po sa Panginoong Diyos sapagkat ang dami nating kwento po sa Pinnacle Village at sa ating pong community ho of people have decided to live generous lives. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. For you, giving generously has become a lifestyle. But for some of us here today, may mga ilan po sa atin siguro, wala ka pa doon. Alam mo ang kahalagahan po ng pagbibigay o pagtulong ho, but you are not there yet. You have committed to attend PV, your family, and even yourself. This is your local church. But somehow, you are not there yet. But I hope after today, you will begin a personal journey to becoming generous or being more generous to God by giving back to Him. Kung yung mapupuna ho sa ating church po sa Pinnacle Village, we don't pass baskets for offerings. May nakikita ba ho kayo? Let us know kung mayroon ho nagpapasa po ng basket po sa inyong local church. And we seldom talk about giving financially to God. Because we believe as a church that God is a way of prompting, of reminding, of talking to us about giving back to Him. Especially if you have surrendered your life to Him. Not only your money, but your time and your talent as well. For Christians and followers of Jesus, giving generously is a lifestyle. And I want to talk about a letter that Paul wrote to the church in Corinth in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, 2 Corinthians 8 verses 1 to 5. And just to give you a context a little bit before I read verses 1 to 5, St. Paul informs a group of believers from Corinth about the need in Jerusalem. And Paul was urging them to help the church in Jerusalem. Why? Because the church in Jerusalem was going through persecution and financial difficulties. If you have been attending our ethos or midbiko, we talked about that part in Acts 11, where the church in Jerusalem was going through so much. May binabanggit ho dong famine po na dinadaanan po ng maraming pong lugar nung panahon po ni Emperor Claudius. So the church in Corinth has made a promise to give or support, but they have not fulfilled that promise yet. So Paul, in this letter, is reminding them about the promise to support the church in Jerusalem. But ang maganda ho dito sa 2 Corinthians 8, ang ginamit pong halimbawa po ni St. Paul ay ang churches po sa Macedonia. He was talking about this church who gave generously and sacrificially. Ano ho yung mga churches na yon sa Macedonia? Yan po yung Philippi, yan po yung Berea and Thessalonica, which all are located po in Greece. So today, let's learn from them, the Macedonian churches. In 2 Corinthians 8, verses 1 to 5, let me read. Now I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, what God in His kindness has done through the churches in Macedonia. Listen well, let's read. They are being tested by many troubles. Grabe. Hindi lang ho yan isang problema ho ang kanilang dinadaan. They are being tested by many troubles and they are very poor. Iba ho yung poor sa ating panahon ngayon. Sa Europe, iba ho yung pag sinabing poor. Ewan ko kung may ganong klaseng poor ho sa Europe. Maging sa Amerika. But they were poor. Patingnan niyo yung sumunod na sinabi po sa verse 2. But they are also filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. Pwede palang magkasama yon. May problema ka, mahirap ka, pero masaya ka. And you're overflowing in rich generosity. Paul said, "For I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more." Whew, lalim nito. They gave what they could afford, but far more. And they did it of their own free will. Wala hong nag-push sa kanila. They beg us again and again for the privilege of sharing, underline the word privilege. The privilege of sharing the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. They even did more than we had hoped, for their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. Sa Tagalog, basahin ho natin. Mga kapatid, nais naming malaman niyo ang pinakitang kagandahang loob ng Diyos sa mga iglesia sa Macedonia. Dumanas sila ng matinding kahirapan at ito'y isang mahigpit na pagsubok sa kanila. Ngunit sa kabila ng kanilang paghihikahos, masayang-masaya pa rin sila. Okay, pakicheck mo nga yung katabi mo kung may katabi ka. Masayang-masaya pa ba siya habang tuturo po si Pastor Alex? Okay, ngunit sa kabila ng kanilang paghihikahos, masayang-masaya pa rin sila at bukas ang palad sa pagbibigay. Sila'y kusang loob na nagbigay, hindi lamang sa abot ng kanilang kaya, kundi higit pa. Alam ko ito, sabi ni St. Paul, sapagkat mahigpit nilang pinakiusap sa amin na sa libigyan ng pagkakataong makatulong sa mga kapatid na nangangailangan. At higit sa inaasahan namin, ibinigay nila ang kanilang sarili una sa Panginoon at pagkatapos ay sa amin ayon sa kalooban ng Diyos. We have so much to learn from these churches in Macedonia. It begins by changing our attitudes about giving, about money. Yun ho siguro makikita ho natin dito eh. And you would see the Macedonian churches and their hearts about giving back to God. Because giving to God is a test of our spirituality, of our maturity. Doon ho nasisilip po at nakikita po ang kondisyon ng ating mga puso. At importante ho siguro ngayon na makita ho natin na ibang-iba ho ang ekonomiya ng Panginoong Diyos. Basahin lang ho natin muli yung verses 1 to 8, makikita mo ibang-iba ho. Grabe ang kanilang ekonomiya. They were poor. They were being tested ho. But they were joyful. And they were giving generously. At yun ho ang ating silipin po simula ho ngayon. At ako ho ay may 3 puntos na gusto kong daanan po sa atin na sana ho pagkatapos po ng araw na ito. At ang ating pong mensahe po ngayong araw ito, your mind has changed, or the mindset, your heart attitudes have changed about this area and topic of giving generously. Simulan natin yung una. Tingnan niyo ho ito. From this is mine to this is God's. And we're talking about stewardship po. And Pastor Dave and Pastor Amber mentioned the word stewardship po last Sunday. And this is what we want to begin. Verses 1 and 5 again, 2 Corinthians 8. Now I want you to know, yan ang sabi ni Paul. Gusto niyang malaman po ng mga taong tuho sa Korinto. Sabi niya, now I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, what God in His kindness, let's pause for a while. Ang sabi ho ni Paul dito, gusto ko malaman niyo, yung kabutihan ng Panginoong Diyos. At doon ho tayo magsisimula. Kasi yun ho ang kinakailangan magbago sa ating pananaw, sa ating puso ho. Nakadalasan, akala ho natin, atin po kung anong meron ho tayo. This is my career. This is my business. This is my job. This is my money. And on. Walang katapusang listahan po na inakala ho natin atin ho yun. But magandang paalala hong sabi ni Pablo, now I want you to know what God in His kindness has done through the churches in Macedonia. Verse 5, they even did more than we had hoped, for their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. We have to be reminded that God is kind and generous. And the reason we have what we have is because of God's kindness and God's goodness. Psalm 24 verse 1, anong sabi ng psalmist? The earth is the Lord's. Isipin niyo ho yun. The earth is the Lord's. Lahat po ng ating pong meron tayo ngayon ay galing ho sa Panginoong Diyos. Siya ho yung nagkakaloob. He is the provider of all things. Psalm 24 verse 1, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it, which means we do not own anything. Yes, probably you're thinking, Pastor, pinagpaguran ko ito eh. Di ba? Ang Diyos naman siguro dahil ikaw naman talagang nagsusumikap, hindi pagpapalain ka. But malaking tulong po itong aking nabasa po sa Deuteronomy 8 verse 18. Anong sabi doon? Sabi ho doon, but remember the Lord your God. Huwag mong kalilimutan ng Panginoong Diyos. At kadalasan, madali ho tayo makalimot. Pag may pangailangan po, tawag ho tayo sa Panginoong Diyos. Pag mayroon pong concern at may kinakailangan pong sagutin ng Panginoong Diyos, handali ho natin lumapit. Maganda ho yun. We can come to God. We can pray and believe that God can answer and will answer our prayers. But sabi ho dito in Deuteronomy 8 verse 18, but remember the Lord your God. Bakit? For it is He who gives you the what? The ability to produce wealth. Yes, you work hard for what you have right now. Congratulations. But do not forget, but remember, it is God who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Naalala ko ang kwento ho ng isang bata ho na lumapit sa kanyang ama. At medyo takam na takam ho siya at sabi sa kanyang tatay, punta tayo sa McDonald's. Ewan ko bakit hindi Jollibee. McDonald's ho. So yung anak po, tuwang-tuwa ho, talagang sinamahan po yung kanyang anak po na excited pumunta ho na McDonald's kasi ang hinahanap po niya yung kanyang paboritong pagkain, French fries. Pagdating ho doon po sa counter po, ang gusto ho ng bata, small fries. But dahil sa sobrang pag-ibig po ng kanyang ama sa kanyang anak ho, ang in-order hindi small fries but large fries. So naghihintay sila hanggang dumating na ho yung order nila, tapos pumunta ho sila sa upuan. Yung bata ho, nagmamadali ho, talagang sumubo ho, katalang sunod-sunod ho yung pagkuha po ng french fries. Maya-maya habang nanonood yung tatay ho, naisipan niyang makisali, natakam. At bigla hong kumuha po ng ilang piraso pong french fries. Alam niyo ho, nagulat ho yung tatay nung sinabi ng kanyang anak po sa kanya, Dad, this is mine. Nakalimutan ng bata, teka muna anak. Ang gusto mo lang naman, small fries, binili kita ng large fries, huwag mong kalimutan, pera kong ginastos ko dyan. I just want to partake and fellowship with you while you're eating your french fries. Siguro nagagalit ho kayo sa bata at kinainisan nyo, but yun ho, minsan totoo ho sa ating buhay. That we thought everything we have is ours and we don't want to share them. Again, sabi nga kanina, minsan kung isipin mo, okay, alam natin ang Diyos ang nagbibiyaya ho ng lahat ng bagay. But we act sometimes as if this is my business, this is my career, this is my money, or this is my car. When in reality, it all belongs to God. And these things are just on loan to us while we are still alive. Si A.W. Tozer po, ito ang sabi niya, in the book of Genesis, there are simply called things. Bagay-bagay yung binigay sa atin. Hindi para ho tayo magapi ho ng mga bagay-bagay at yan ho ang ating mga idolo po at ating Diyos. They are simply called things. They were made for man's use, but they were meant always to be external to the man and subservient to him. In the deep heart of the man was a shrine where none but God was worthy to come. Our woes began when God was forced out of his central shrine and things were allowed to enter. And within the human heart, things have taken over. Men have now by nature no peace within their hearts, for God is crowned there no longer. There's now within the human heart a tough, fibrous root of fallen life, whose nature is to possess, and always to possess. It covets things with a deep and fierce passion. Kasi David ho, naunawaan ho niya yung ibig sabihin po ng stewardship. Pakinggan niyo po ang sinabi ni David nung time na gustong-gusto niya magtayo ng templo. At hindi siya ang ginamit ng Panginoong Diyos, but he wanted to offer something. In 1 Chronicles 29 verse 14, anong sabi ho ni David? Oh our God, we thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I? And who are my people that we could give anything to you? Eto ho, malaki na ho yung mga letra. Everything we have, ang sabi ni David, has come from you. Pakisahin mo nga, saktan mo yun. Everything you have has come from God. Yun ang sabi ni David. And we give you only what you first gave us. Grabe ho yung pananaw ho niya, no? Yung kalalagayan ho ng kanyang puso, yung attitude ho ng kanyang puso. Lord, lahat naman to galing sa iyo eh. Kaya naman kami nagpagbibigay kasi ikaw ang unang nagbigay sa amin. We are here for only a moment, visitors and strangers in the land as our ancestors were before us. Our days on earth are like a passing shadow, gone so soon without a trace. David understood stewardship. He said, we have what we have is yours, and we are here temporarily. Si Paul ho, nung sumulat po kay Timoteo, ito rin hong sabi niya, at paalala ho sa atin, for we have brought nothing into the world, so it is clear that we cannot take anything out of it either. Ecclesiastes 5 verse 15, sabi ho doon, people come into the world with nothing. Nung pinanganak ka ba, meron kang daladalang cellphone? Nung pinanganak ka ba, may daladala kang pera ho, at sinabi mong, eto, meron na ako. Okay, baby pa lang ako. No, people come into the world with nothing. And when they die, anong sabi doon? They leave with nothing. They might work hard to get things, but they cannot take anything with them when they die. Natatandaan niyo ba ang kwento po ni Alexander the Great? Alala ho natin yon after conquering kingdoms. And he went back to his country. Nagkasakit ho siya at malapit na ho siyang mamatay. Pinagtipon-tipon niya ho yung kanyang mga general at itong sabi niya, I will depart from this world soon. I have 3 wishes. Please carry them out without fail. The king asked his general to abide by these last wishes. Ano ho yung kanyang mga wishes? Number 1, my physicians alone must only carry my coffin. Number 2, I desire that when my coffin is being carried to the grave, the path leading to the graveyard be filled with the wealth that I collected. Number 3, my third and last wish is that both my hands be kept hanging out of my coffin. So yung mga general ho niya, sabing, sige po, okay, susundin ho namin yung mga bilin niyo sa amin. At ang tanong ho ng kanilang mga general, Alexander the Great, aming hari, ano bang dahilan sa lahat ng binili mo sa amin? Etong sagot po ni Alexander the Great, I want the world to know the 3 lessons I have just learned. Number 1, I want my physicians to carry my coffin because people should realize that no doctor on this earth can really cure anybody. They are helpless in front of death. But pangalong sabi ho ni Alexander the Great, I spent all my I spent all my life earning riches, but cannot take anything with me. Let people know that wealth is nothing but dust. At panghuling sabi ho ni Alexander the Great, I wish people to know that I came empty-handed into this world and I will go empty-handed. Church, friends, probably 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, or 40 years from now, it will not matter kung anong dinadrive mong sasakyan o may bahay kang malaki o saan ka nakatira. It doesn't really matter kung anong tatak ho ng iyong bag, galing ho ng Paris o galing po ng Netherlands o galing ho ng Switzerland. It doesn't really matter. O galing ng Amerika. It doesn't really matter kung magkano ho laman ng ating pananalapi sapagkat ito ho ay paalala sa atin, we're just passing through. We're not here to stay. So remind yourself that we are merely God's stewards, managers of God's resources, that we are simply recipients of God's grace. Until we recognize that, we will not be good stewards and managers of what has been entrusted to us. Pero ito yung pangalawa. Sana pagkatapos ho ng ating pong mensahe po ngayong araw na ito, mag-iba ho ang ating pananaw patungkol po sa mga bagay-bagay, patungkol sa pananalapi at pagbibigay ho sa Panginoong Diyos. Ito ho yung I may not have enough. Na sana eventually ito ho yung ating pananaw, He will provide me enough. Many times our struggle in giving generously is because we think we don't have enough. Yung wala naman ako eh. When you're broke and you begin to worry about your life, your finances, and your future. When you say I don't have enough, what do we mean? Ano ba yung I don't have enough? 100 pesos? 100 euros? $100? 500? 1,000? 1,500? 5,000? Ano ba yung I don't have enough? Because if that is the basis of your giving and becoming generous to God, then most likely we won't be able to give. I'll be honest with you. There are times as a pastor I struggle with giving back to God. Especially when the funds are low. Yung alam mo, sunod-sunod ho yung gastusin po kasi meron kang pamilya ho. Nagkakasabay-sabay yung pangailangan. Niisip mo, baka pa pwede kong itago ito at wag na muna ibigay sa Panginoong Diyos. Bawi na lang ako next time. Nananaalan niyo ba ho yun? Yung tipong, Lord, wala ako eh. Takot ako mawalan trabaho. Patong-patong yung mga bills. Magpapadala pa ako sa Pilipinas, sa aking kamag-anak po. Kasi may sinusuportahan ako, katetext lang sa akin. Merong sakit itong nanay ko, kapatid ko, kamag-anak ko, o apo ng nanay ko. Pamangkin ko yun, ang tawag ho doon. So sometimes the struggle is to keep the money that we have set aside for God for emergency purposes. At ako naintindihan ko yung mga panahon na mayroon tayong struggle sa ating pagbibigay sa Panginoon kasi we don't have enough. Most especially now that economy is down. Or probably your business is not doing okay. And you're overwhelmed with so many financial responsibilities pagkatapos po ng pandemya, medyo aburido ka at nag-aalala ka. But listen well. Kung sa point number 1 is an issue of stewardship, the second one is an issue of faith. Ang pagbibigay po at kawalan ho ng pagbibigay po ay palatandaan po ng ating pagkakaroon ng panampalataya o pagkakaroon ng panampalataya. Every time we give back to God, and you hear probably in your church about tithes and offerings, at tayo nananalangin sa bandang ending ho patungkol ho sa pagbibigay ho sa Panginoong Diyos. But when you are giving in spite of what is lacking in your life, it is your way of saying, Lord, I trust in you that you will take care of my needs. That you are the God who holds the future. That God, I will trust your promises. That I will just continually give consistently and just follow you and obey your commandments. You will take care of me. Si A.A. Hyde po isang philanthropist, developer po ng Mentolatum. Kilala ho siya bilang ama o isang tao po sa pananampalataya po at pagbibigay ho sa Panginoong Diyos. Nung tinanong ho siya, kasi may mga panahon po na ang dami ho niyang utang eh. Eto ho, he was a millionaire na nung panahon po yun, but he began tithing when he was $100,000 in debt. Nagsimula siyang mag-tithe, ang utang po niya, $100,000. Marami nagsasabi sa kanya, hindi ba dishonesty yun na nagbibigay ka sa Panginoong Diyos ng 10th of your income, pero puno-puno ka ng utang? Nung una po si Mr. Hyde was agreeing with the thought that until one day God spoke to him, and God said that God was his first creditor. Then he began paying God first, and all other creditors were eventually paid in full. Sabi ho ni Mr. Hyde, if you want to help the man who owes you money, it will be wise business policy on your part to encourage the man to pay his debt to God first. Church, the people in Macedonia have every reason not to give. Why? Because they were poor. They were in great trouble and suffering, but they begged to give. Balikan ho natin 2 Corinthians 8 verses 2 to 4. Anong sabi po ni St. Paul? They are being tested by many troubles, and they are very poor. But they are also filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. For I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, grabe ito, but far more. Nakiusap pa. They begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing the gift of the believers in Jerusalem. In another translation po of the same text, verses 2 and 4, while they were being severely tested by suffering, their overflowing joy along with their extreme poverty has made them even more generous. Sa kabila ho ng kakulangan, wala ho silang pwedeng ibigay ho. They became generous. Verse 4, they made an appeal to us, begging us to let them participate in the ministry of God's kindness to His holy people in Jerusalem. Pwede ho yun. You can be poor and having many problems and yet happy and generous. Ang sabi po ng Bible Exposition Commentary about yung kahirapan po na meron po ang church sa Macedonia. Sabi ng Bible Exposition Commentary, they were in deep poverty, which means rock bottom destitution. The word describes a beggar who has absolutely nothing, has no hope of getting anything. Their difficult situation may have been caused in part by the Christian faith, persecuted ho sila, for they may have lost their jobs or been excluded from the trade guilds because they refused to have anything to do with idolatry. Kumbaga, ito ang lesson. Their circumstances did not hinder them from giving. Naintindihan nila yung gracious giving o grace giving o irrational giving, which means you give in spite of your circumstances. Si Gordon MacDonald po, anong sabi niya? Note Paul's description of the condition in which these people gave. They were what? In severe trial, which probably alludes to stiff persecution. They were poor, in the extreme, yet neither of these two facts deterred them from asking the question. Ang tanong pa ho nila sa kabila ng kanilang kahirapan, how much can we give? Kaya sa NIV po yung words na, o phrase na welled up, the phrase welled up. And sa NLT po, ang gamit po is overflowing. The phrase welled up in some translations provides a vivid word picture. One envisions a spout of water coming up from the ground, generous giving, gushing out of lives marked with suffering and scarcity. The amount given is not important. The proportion means everything. Church, Pinnacle Village, when we become generous in our giving, it is our statement of our faith. Remember, they were poor and they have problems. And probably today, God is saying, will you trust me? Will you obey me? Will you believe that I will provide you with what you need if you follow me? Church, there are so many promises related to giving to God. But the question is this, sa lahat ng nabasa ho natin, o binabasa ho natin in the past, are we willing to trust and obey God? Naalala kong Proverbs 11:24 and 25. Sabi ho dun, give freely and become more wealthy. Be stingy and lose everything. The generous will prosper, and those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Acts 20 verse 35. You should remember the words of the Lord Jesus Christ. It is more blessed to give than to receive. So let me say this again. When you say, I don't have enough, hindi ko kaya magbigay, hindi ko kaya maging generous po sa ibang tao. Point number 2 is a statement of faith. Hindi ho yan economic o financial issue. Issue ho ito ng ating pananampalataya ho sa Panginoong Diyos. I'm reminded ho of the widow in Luke chapter 21. Ito ho, basahin po natin. While Jesus was in the temple, he watched the rich people dropping their gifts in the collection box. Then a poor widow came by and dropped in 2 small coins. Dalawa ho yun, isang mayaman po at isa hong widow na napakahirap. Anong sabi ni Jesus? Nagtutuhuro siya eh. I tell you the truth, Jesus said, this poor widow has given more than all the rest of them. Wow! Bakit? Sabi ng verse 4, for they have given a tiny part of their surplus. But the widow, poor as she is, has given everything she has. Importante hong reminder po sa atin yon. That although the widow was poor, but she gave everything. That God was moved. Hindi ho yung binigay ho ng mayan kasi surplus lang ho yun eh. Isang maliit na porsyento po ng kanyang kayamanan po. Wala hong yung pain ho sa pagbibigay, walang struggle ho sa pagbibigay yon. Isipin mo ikaw widow ka. Hindi mo alam kung saan kakukuha ng kakainin pagkatapos ibigay ho yun sa Diyos, yung 2 coins, small coins. At binigay mo sa Panginoong Diyos. At ginamit ito ng Panginoong Diyos itong lesson po ng matagal na hong panahon to teach us, okay, that God honors a person not because he has so much to give, but story of a woman who is poor, a widow, and yet she gave everything. It is not the amount. Akala ho natin ho, the rich are generous people ho. I mean, kung kayo ho mayaman, bless you ho. But kadalasan po sa aming experience ho, kasi kita mo naman sa Bible, di ba? Yung kwento ho ng Macedonian churches, hindi naman sila mayaman eh. Ba sila yung kinausap po ni Paul, patungkol po sa concern po sa mga churches po sa Jerusalem. And sometimes we think the giving is reserved for the rich. It is not. It's a myth to say that rich people automatically are generous. No, that's not true. Si Andy Stanley po, isang pastor sa Amerika, at ang kanyang tatay po noong Tuesday ho, namatay na ho at age 90. Ang kanyang tatay ho ni Andy Stanley, Charles Stanley ho, at age 90 ho, isang pastor, ay namatay na ho. But ang sabi ni Andy Stanley, rich people are rich. And generous people are generous. Ako hindi ho nagsabi nito. Poor people are generally far more generous. I'm not saying pag ikaw mayaman, hindi ka generous. You can be generous. But sa ating pong experience, kadalasan po, kung sino ho yung walang-wala, kasi naunawaan nila kung anong wala at ibig sabihin ng walang-wala ka. Alam nila kung paano makatutulong po sa mga taong walang-wala na, kung anong meron ka at binigay mo ho yun. Yun ho talaga ang kwento ho dito. And Paul appealed to the people to give, did not approach the rich churches during his time, but he asked the churches in Macedonia, who were going through so much, and who were poor. Kung ano ba ang lesson sa atin ho sa pangalawa? Ano yung mentalidad ho natin, kaisipan ho natin na ating laman ng ating puso na I don't have enough. Don't wait till you have more to be able to give generously. Kung kokonti ho man at wala ho tayong ganong kasapat hong kayamanan po and ng Diyos ho, tayo po'y kinakaugnay ho. And this is the best time amidst the difficulties that we're facing, amidst the economy. Hindi ho okay, ang business natin hindi okay ho. But maybe this is the best time for us to begin. And to practice being generous. Because when you have a lot, most likely, okay, kung nahirapan ka ng mga panahon na konting-konti at walang-wala kang ibibigay, most likely kung marami ka and you have blessed with so much, it's more difficult to give. If we have not practiced generosity, yung mga panahon na walang-wala ho tayo. Naalala kong Luke 16 verse 10, sabi ho doon, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with very much. Naalala ko din ho yung sinabi po ni St. Paul, 2 Corinthians 9, pero basahin ko na ho yung verse 8. Tumalo na ho tayo ng verse 8. Anong sabi niya? And God can give you more blessings that you need. Habang nangangako sila magbibigay po, tutulong, susuporta po sa church sa Jerusalem. At itong sabi ho ni Paul sa kanila, and God can give you more blessings that you need. And you will always have plenty of everything. You will have enough to give to every good work. At yan ho yung ekonomiya ng Panginoong Diyos. That when we give, we're not losing. When we give, we're actually gaining more. Yun ho yung pangalawa. But ito ho yung pangatlo. Change our heart attitude from I will give occasionally to I will give consistently. This is the third heart attitude that we need to possess. The Lord, this year, maybe starting today, I will give consistently and not just occasionally. It talks about having a plan to give, which means you set it aside. Itabi mo agad ho, sa Tagalog ho yun, because this one is an issue of commitment. Yung una is an issue of stewardship. Yung pangalawa is an issue of faith. But yung pangalawa po is an issue po of commitment. Because if you don't plan to give consistently, you will never be a generous person. Listen to St. Paul, sabi niya sa 1 Corinthians 16 verse 2. Anong sabi niya? On the first day of each week. Sabi pakinggan ho natin, basahin po natin. On the first day of each week. Every time they gather po every Sunday. Anong sabi niya? Before you go and attend a service gathering, you prepare something to give to God. On the first day of each week, you should each put aside a portion of the money you have earned. Ang iba pa pwedeng weekly. Ang iba pa pwede hong every other week. Ang iba ho, monthly. But you plan. You need to decide in your heart. Dapat ho ito pinag-uusapan ho ng mga asawa at ng pamilya ho. That on the first day of each week, you should each put aside a portion of the money you have earned. Huwag ka na maghintay. Okay? Na mag-encourage po at magpaalala ho ang pastor kung sino mo nasa harap. Do not wait. Ako na lang ho yun sa ating konteksto ngayon. But kay Paul, sabi niya ho sa church ng Corinth, do not wait until I get there and then try to collect it all at once. It's so important for us to understand that Paul was telling the church to prepare their gifts even before they come to worship. Because giving back to God is an act of worship. Si Paul ho sa Philippians 4:18, ito ho yung kanyang konsepto ho ng pagbibigay as part of your worship. Sabi niya sa verse 18, with what Epaphroditus delivered to me from your generous pockets. Kasama ho yan sa Macedonian churches, di ba yung Philippi? I have even been blessed in excess. Sabi ni Paul, I am fully satisfied. I know God is pleased with your what? With your dedication. And yung the word na dedication, commitment. Hindi pa minsan-minsan. God is pleased with your dedication and accepts this gift as a what? As a fragrant offering. Mabango ho sa Diyos po ang ating pong dinadalang alay po sa Kanya, linggo-linggo. A holy sacrifice on His behalf. Friends, church, this is not a random act of giving. Hindi ito yung paminsan-minsan lang ho. Because good people do random acts of giving. Anong pagkakaiba? Pag sinabi kong random acts of giving po, ang ibig sabihin po nito, yung minsan ka lang magbigay. Minsan ka lang ho nag-o-offer ho ng anumang pagpapalang binigay ng Diyos sa'yo. Kapag naalala mo lang. O depende kung meron ka o wala ka. Depende ho. Depende sa emosyon, kung medyo tinamaan ka, na-guilty ka, may challenge nung araw na yon, doon ka magbibigay. Ang tawag ko doon, random act of giving. It is based on emotion or depends on your cash flow. But generosity is different from random acts of giving. For us followers of Jesus, it is not random. It is planned. It is intentional. It is about commitment and consistency. Si Ron Blue po, author po ng aklat pong Master Your Money. At ito po ang sabi niya. Ang sinasabi niya basically, if you don't have plan, most likely, you will forget. Sabi niya, ito yung 5 bagay na ginagawa natin sa ating pananalapi. Unang-una kaagad. Ewan kung sino sa inyo, ganun po. Pag merong perang dumating sa'yo, you spend it. Or repay debt. Or then you pay your taxes. Pang-apat ho, you save it. Tingnan niyo ho yung kung ano hong panghuli. At kadalasan po ang ating paggamit ng ating pananalapi at pagbibigay ho sa Panginoong Diyos ay laging panghuli. If giving is last, I'm sorry to say that. Or to say this, hindi po ito pagpapakita ho ng pagiging generous. When giving is last, you are not a generous person. For Jesus followers, giving is first. Bakit hindi natin baliktarin? Una ho is to give. But second is to save. And the rest, nasa inyo na ho yun. Let's go back to 2 Corinthians 8, verses 10 to 11. Now you should finish what you started. Kumbaga sa kanila, ngako sila. Ba't nakalimutan 1 taon ho yun? Grabe, andun yung intensyon, andun yung excitement, andun yung eagerness. Kaya sabi ho na St. Paul sa church ng Corinth, now you should finish what you started. Very emotional nung una. Nangako, may excitement. Let the eagerness you showed in the beginning be matched now by your giving. Give in proportion to what you have. Sabi ko nga kanina, nung una ho, they were excited to give. They were eager to give. But after a year, they have not fulfilled the promise to give. Intention to give is okay. But we need commitment and to prioritize our giving back to God. Proverbs 3 verse 9, nung sabi hong the Message version, honor God with what? With everything you own. Anong sabi ng Proverbs 3 verse 9? Give Him the what? The first and the best. Sa Tagalog, parangalan mo ang Panginoon sa magitan ng paghahandog sa Kanya ng mga unang bunga ng inyong ani. So Solomon instructed us about honoring God by prioritizing giving back to God in their life. We give by our commitment and not just by intention. Si Gordon MacDonald po sa kanyang aklat, ito pong sabi niya, a strategy of giving has been formed in the mind and heart of a Christ follower. Dito pa lang. At dito ho, nagdi-decide ka na. Even before you give. A giving plan begins with a settled conviction that what I have earned or what has been given to me is not mine, but God's. That I do not have a right to spend it all upon myself or my own interests. Having said that, what percentage of the possessions God has entrusted to us does He expect us to give away? Sabi ho niyang suggestion niya, the Bible starting point is the tithe. Yan ho yung Old Testament. They give 10%. The important thing then is to at least pick a percentage that is small enough to be reachable, yet large enough to stretch one's faith a bit. Ito ang magandang sabi niya rin. And yet our goal as believers remains the same, always to be working toward the day when our giving exceeds the simple tithe. Kumbaga ho, sa atin po sa Pinnacle Village kay Pastor Gina po, ano yun? Prioritize. I think yun ho yung una. Yung parang sinasabi niya, dapat ho yung tipong yung percentage. At least begin with 10%. Ang iba ko siguro, ang kaya ko lang is 8% or 9%. That's okay. But begin with something. Begin with your tithe. Bagamat ang bagong tipan po, wala hong binigay hong 10%. They gave more. Merong sacrificial giving ho yun. Na napaka-importante. At sabi ho doon ni Gordon MacDonald uli, yung bandang huli, always to be working toward the day when our giving exceeds the simple tithe. Priority mo ba yan? Yung kaunuan po ng percentage, base sa natatanggap mo sa Panginoong Diyos. But siyempre, andun ho yung progressive. Kumbaga, lumalago ho yung pagbibigay mo sa Panginoong Diyos. Nagpapaunat ka sa Panginoong Diyos. Sabi ng 2 Corinthians po 9:7, sabi ni St. Paul, each man should give what he has decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Decide when to give, where to give, your local church. And for those who are watching us online, at wala ka pa hong commitment po sa isang local church, I hope that you will find in your heart to be a part of a journey of giving back to God wherever you are at. Kahit wala ka pong isang on-site pong pinupuntahan po, let's practice this grace giving and giving back to God. Naalala ko pong kwento po ni Orville Rogers. Ito po ay isang mama hong pinanganak po sa Texas in 1917. Tingnan niyo yung mga larawan po niya. Okay? He grew up in Oklahoma as a young man. But meron po siyang dalawang passions sa buhay. Una po, okay, aviation. Pangalawa po, yung kanyang pananampalataya. His first airline or airplane ride was when he was 10. Bata pa ho siya, hindi alam ng kanyang magulang po, but nakasakay ho siya, nagbayad lang ho siya ng $4 ng panahong yon. And because of that, naging passion niya ho ang maging piloto. Ito ang sabi niya, I wanted to be a pilot since I knew what an airplane was. Then came his first ride in an airplane. But his second passion was God. He took his Baptist faith seriously as a young man and even chose college with mission work in his mind. Itong sabi niya, God wanted me in some kind of religious work, so I went to seminary planning to enter church or missionary service. He eventually entered the military, and then after his military service, Rogers spent 30 years bilang ipiloto ho ng isang commercial airplane o airline. But during his downtime between flights, he taught himself a second vocation, the basics of investing, with Forbes magazine and the Wall Street Journal as his guides. Rogers, as it turns out, had a talent for turning money into money. Though he earned $1.5 million during his 40 years of work, an average of $37,500 per year, he parlayed his investment into fortune. One thing, that you can learn from him, and even his bride, his wife, is that they eventually gave away everything, over $34 million before he died. But the number one thing that inspires people about this guy, ito ho yun, his commitment together with his wife to tithe to their local church. They felt they could give more, so they began to increase the percentage above and beyond. They even lived less to save, even invested so they can give more from the profit they earn. Ito ang sabi niya, I want to return to God all the assets I can to further His work on earth. Grabe yung kanyang kaisipan po at puso. Itong sabi niya, we are just stewards for a while and then we leave. He added, I believe the only way we could have accumulated so much wealth was by giving it away. God knew we would give back as much as we possibly could. And He helped us grow and grow in abundance. God was and continues to be involved in every aspect of my life, including my finances. Friends, the story of this man, Mr. Rogers, is a story of living generously. And I pray that today you would choose to dedicate your life, to surrender your life to God first, and then to live a generous life. Ang sekreto ng Macedonian churches po, ito 2 Corinthians 8 verse 5. Sabi ho ni Paul, their first action, ang unang lang ginawa, hindi naman kasi nagbigay sa Panginoong Diyos, nagsakripisyo. Itong sekreto nila eh. Their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. They surrendered their lives and gave God the access to their lives, everything, their time, their talent, and their treasure. Can I talk to you before I end in prayer? Some of you have been regularly giving back to God. And maybe God is prodding you to increase your giving. Nakausap ka ng Panginoong Diyos, consistent ka naman, okay? But ang sabi ng Diyos sa'yo, give more. It's very personal. Listen to God. But some of you, you have started giving to your local church many years ago. But somehow something happened and you stopped giving back to Him and giving back consistently. And God is asking you probably today to recommit again. And God is saying, trust me. Give what is mine and test me. Some of you have not started this journey of giving back to God, of living generous lives. And today is your first time to hear this message. And God is talking to you to commit, to make a commitment, to prioritize God in your finances. There are many reasons people give. Ang iba dahil sa kanilang obligasyon po. Okay? Ang iba dahil sa takot po o guilt na hindi sila pagpapalain ng Panginoong Diyos. But I pray that the greatest fuel and the reason we give is because we love God first. Sabi ho ng Bible po, 2 Corinthians 8 verses 7 to 8, just as you are rich in everything, in faith and speech, in knowledge, in all sincerity, and in the love we have shown among you now, I ask you to invest, underline the word invest, I ask you to invest richly in this gracious work too. Marami tayong pangarap po sa ating gawain. Sa Pilipinas, I hope one time we could find a place for PB South where we can meet regularly ho. A place that we can rent. Australia ho, nangangarap ho tayo. Pampanga ho. Aklan nangangarap ho tayo. PB North. Europa ho at maging sa Middle East. Itong sabi ni St. Paul, I'm going to command you, but I'm going to offer you the chance to prove your love genuine. And God is giving us another chance. The chance today to offer our lives, to surrender everything to Him, to live generous lives, and to remember your local church and even your local pastors. The chance to prove your love genuine in the same way others have done. Tatapos po ko sa Tagalog po, na translation po ng 2 Corinthians chapter 8 verse 7 to 8. Kayong mga nasa Korinto ay nangunguna sa lahat ng bagay. Malakas ang inyong pananampalataya. Magaling kayong magturo, gabing inyong gifting. Marami kayong alam. Masipag sa paglilingkod sa Diyos. Malaki ang inyong pag-ibig sa amin. Kaya gusto namin na manguna rin kayo sa pagbibigay. Hindi sa inuutusan ko kayo, sinasabi ko lamang sa inyo ang ginagawang pagtulong ng iba para may pakita din sa inyo sa amin na tunay ang inyong pagmamahal. We will be praying po, and I know the Lord has spoken to you. You stayed, you tuned in, you leaned in, and you allowed the Lord to speak to you. But before we end in prayer, allow me to just call our worship team to just give us a response song before we end in prayer.
If you ask me for an offering, I'd give it. If you want a sacrifice, I would obey. But my life is all I have, and I live it, dedicated to the honor of your name.
Manalangin ho tayo. Let's just bow our heads for a while and just close our eyes. Respond to the song and to the message that God has given us today. Panginoon, lumalapit kami sa iyo, O Diyos. Ako, ang aking pamilya. Ang lahat kami, aming Ama, na naandito po sa aming on-site gathering. Salamat, Panginoon, aming Ama, na naipakita mo sa amin ang mga essential sa buhay. Ang huddle, ang aming mission of reaching out, ang pagbigay ng aming mga sarili sa pagsisilbi, Panginoon, sa ministeryo, ang maging Panginoon sa pagtulong, Panginoon, aming Ama, sa iyong gawain. To be able to support the church, the local church financially by becoming generous, O God. Lord, we thank you for reminding us, O God, that what we have is not ours. Hindi amin to, Panginoong Diyos. Pinagkaloob mo, pinahiram mo lang sa amin, Panginoong Diyos. Ang darating panahon namin, may iiwan namin ang lahat ng ito, O Diyos. Lord, tulungan mo kami, Panginoon, aming Ama, na maging magandang patutuo ng kami ay hindi naririto, aming Ama, para po sa aming mga sarili lamang, kundi magpagamit sa iyo, O Diyos, maging sa aming panahon at maging sa aming pananalapi, O Diyos. Panginoon, salamat, aming Ama, na you have a way of just allowing us to test you, O God. Although we're sometimes nothing to give, wala ho kami ibibigay, natatakot kami sa aming kinabukasan. Hindi ho maganda, Panginoong, ekonomiya, may inflation ho, Panginoong Diyos. But we want to trust you and follow you and obey you, O God. And believe that you hold our future. You're the God who provides. You are the shepherd of our soul, O God. Hindi kami natatakot, Panginoong Diyos. And we'll just continue to respond by being consistent, O God. Supporting the work generously, O God. Saan man kami, Panginoon, na andun na church, aming Ama. Salamat din, Panginoong Diyos, aming Ama, sa paalala, Panginoong Diyos, na hindi ito random act of giving, but it's a matter of commitment. And today, Lord God, I know it's so difficult to just understand, but there's a prompting, a prodding in my heart to just not resist, but to obey you, O God. To set aside every week, or every other week or monthly, O God. Hindi random acts of giving. Hindi, Panginoong Diyos, paminsan-minsan, kundi, Panginoong Diyos, a commitment to be able to give and to support the work where you have called us to commit, Father God. Salamat, Panginoon, sa iyong mga pangako. That as we give our tithes today and our offerings, Lord God, or remember our church, or remember our local pastors, O God, Lord, ikaw na po ang bahala sa aming pamilya, O Diyos, sa aking business. Pinaubaya ko, Panginoong Diyos, muli ang aking buhay. Pagharian mo, Panginoong Diyos, ang aking buhay. Salamat po, aming Ama, sa iyong kabutihan, sa iyong pag-ibig, sa iyong pagmamahal sa amin. Salamat po at ito pong aming panalangin sa pangalan po ni Jesus. Amen. Amen.